Hello, everybody, and welcome to Morning Call for Friday, the 6th of September 2019. I'm Fab from Hamburg, where autumn has begun and it's really cold now at night. Wow. Still sunny, but decidedly autumny as well. Um, First off, I need to apologize. I didn't do shows for 3 days now. This wasn't something I planned. Something came up a good friend of mine had some really bad news, and even though I'm not obviously not personally affected, it kind of hit very close to home, and I felt kind of shitty for a few days, and I really didn't want to do this show in the morning, and also I wasn't very productive for the last few days. But I'm working myself out of it, and I thought might as well kick myself in the ass and keep this going. So I'm back. Should be business as usual next week. I'm sorry for that. Hello, Mike. How are you doing? Always great to see the supporters, and thanks for saying glad I'm back. That means a lot to me. Okay, let's stop with this gut wrenching bullshit and let's get the tech news out. This is why you are here. Currently, there is the IFA, the Internationale Funkausstellung. No, it's not about the music genre funk. It's a tech expo in Berlin. But you won't hear many IFA news from me because I find everything that happens there decidedly boring. It's all hardware stuff. It's some phones, but the good phones is always Mobile World Congress, the good announcements, and then obviously people have their own things like Apple and Google. There's a lot of TV stuff there, which I don't really. It's not really tech. Like I'm okay. If you're watching this show, you must know that hardware news doesn't really interest me a lot. Um, I will report on it when I think it's really important. Some stuff. There's the first story I'm going to talk about in a second is hardware news from IFA, but generally I'm not really so much interested in that. So if you want that, you should really also get some tech news from somebody else. I'm not saying leave. I'm saying, everybody has the stuff they're interested in, and I think, I mean, TVs is just screens. There's nothing technologically interesting happening there at the moment. So I don't know. I guess there's some VR and smart home stuff, but I mostly think most of that's also bullshit. So yeah, I got some interesting stuff though. First story is, as I said, from IFA. The Register reporting on the Samsung Galaxy Fold. Um, they call it the Samsung Galaxy Fold 5G. I don't know if that's new, but might have been the name always. Let's just call it the Fold, which Samsung wanted to have launched already. They at the start of the year they gave some test phones to reporters and tech journalists, and then they all of them figured out very quickly. I mean, in the span of 2 days, that this whole folding screen technology didn't really work, and there was like dirt going into the fold, and it was the phones destroyed themselves. And it looks like Samsung now back with this phone on IFA. They redesigned it. Apparently used a lot of the old components though, and apparently they're back. And from the hands-on that the Register had, which wasn't that much, like it doesn't sound like they got to take one home for a few hours. Obviously on at the trade show floor there, it looks like it's better. But we'll really see. Samsung says they tested this for 200,000 folds, which would be 5 years if you fold it 100 times a day. The Register saying it's pretty hard to fold together and get apart, but it feels very solid. But I guess we'll have to see if until some people get this for longer tests. And I feel like after those first discoveries, every tech journalist worth their salt will put this thing through its paces very roughly to figure out if the problem still exists. So I'll keep an eye on that. Speaking of phones, Google has fixed a lot of vulnerabilities in Android. Like really a lot of fixes. They apparently there's one Android bug that hasn't been fixed, which is a privilege escalation. So I'm guessing that'll come in with the next bundle of patches. As people will probably know, Android fixes are now pushed out in two versions. One just like normal general software updates they can do, and the other one is hardware dependent fixes, which usually the vendors have to put out. Let's say there's the vulnerability in a Broadcom chipset, then that obviously the drivers are different for every device, so the vendors must do that. But a lot of the other fixes Google now actually distribute through the Play Store. So as the register points out, just generally check for system updates and just apply them, which is just good to do. I don't know how many fixes they had. The register saying millions of dollars worth of vulnerabilities, but looks like it's the usual. It's like, I don't know, 50 patches. So just update your Android phone. I was talking about iPhone vulnerabilities recently, and of course Android phones also vulnerable, so patch it. Another thing you should patch is Samba. The file server, open source file server, has a vulnerability. All versions up to and including 4.9.0, where an attacker can break out of, like, if you have a shared folder under certain circumstances, an attacker can break out of that, which means they could get access to the root folder, which is obviously very bad. So this is on Heise. Helpfully, the description of when this appears, Heise just left in English. Apparently they're doing that now. I don't know. Wasn't like that when I was still there, but apparently they're doing that now, so that's helpful for us. It says this is from the patch notes concerning a configuration parameter in SMB conf. The problem is reproducible if the white links option is explicitly set to yes, and either Unix extensions no or allow insecure white links yes is set in addition. So this sounds like it's not vulnerable out of the box, but if you have a Samba server, especially in a big corporate environment, it might pay to check this, because access to the root folder is no laughing matter. And a very edifying and interesting story on the register this morning that I had a good chuckle about was a town in Massachusetts that was attacked by ransomware, the Ryuk ransomware, and obviously they said, pay us. They actually said pay us, how much is it? Like $5.3 million in Bitcoins. Obviously these ransomware criminals they figured out that it's much more lucrative not to go after like private users, but to go after institutions and government offices and cities and stuff, and then, or hospitals, and then or companies, and then just raise the price. But these guys in New Bedford, Massachusetts said, fuck you. We have backups. Go to hell, and didn't pay. So that was great. You don't read that often, that people actually have current backups that they can restore. Apparently they were quite clever. So the guy in charge of that, a guy called Mitchell, was actually talking to the mayor, John Mitchell. Wow. Since they were actually talking to the criminals, they said we want 5.3 million. And basically, Mitchell, so the mayor personally, this is quite cool, made a counter offer and said, we can pay you $400,000, which is what the cyber insurance the city has would pay out. And the criminal declined, but the city continued negotiating. All of this basically because while that was going on, the IT department was like, quarantining the infection and basically fighting the infection. So basically, they knew they had backups, but to restore that as much as possible, they first needed to like quarantine the infection and then improve their defenses and basically fix the security vulnerabilities so that you not restore your backups and then the hackers get right back in, or even worse, at the moment where you're basically connecting your backups, also encrypt your backups. So they need to kind of make sure your systems are clean first. And so they were doing that where they were negotiating, which is pretty cool. That's a fucking awesome mayor. I think that's good. This is a story that needs to be shared more. So current backups, it helps. We're not quite sure if current backups helped Yahoo, but Yahoo email and other services were apparently down. As the register, I love the register because Yahoo for years would always when you as a journalist wrote their name without the exclamation mark, which you do because that's a sentence termination character. You don't use that in the middle of a sentence. Don't even know what that correct grammatical term for that is. I just know how to use it, and you don't use it in the middle of a sentence. Then they, for years, Yahoo PR was notorious to write everybody, please use the exclamation mark, and the register obviously picked up on that very early and made fun of them. So the headline is Yahoo exclaim, customers exclaim, wake exclaim, up exclaim, and so forth. So Yahoo customers wake up to blocked email. Yes, people still actually use it, for fuck's sake. And of course an italic exclamation mark after all of it. They also always say Yahoo with an exclamation mark. In italics, just to take the piss out of them. I like that. So yeah, apparently people still use Yahoo and it was down. You live and learn. It's always something new. And then obviously the end times are here, or we are possibly now in a mirror universe because Richard Stallman has given a talk at Microsoft, at a Microsoft event in London. Microsoft offices at the Microsoft campus. Yes, here is a picture. And yes. So this was tweeted by Alessandro Segala, project marketing manager of open source on Azure, which then prompted jokes that possibly an experiment at the Large Hadron Collider or some other CERN installation has now plunged us into a dystopian alternate dimension of Simon Stollenhag, kind of imagination. I don't know. This is pretty wild. Yeah. So I really don't know what to say about this. But I joked on Twitter earlier that if Dan and me hadn't stopped doing Linux Outlaws, I would propose to do that now because it's obviously the time. UNV, mind blown emoji. And Donegan wonder if Microsoft sorted him out with a host with a parrot. Why? I don't get that reference. What am I missing? What's Stallman's thing with parrots? It doesn't mention parrots. Yeah. Yeah. Computer science professor Matt Blaze grasped the cinematic significance of Dom's appearance immediately. Is that a Creative Commons license on the slides? He said via Twitter. Cats and dogs living together. Yes, the very same Richard Stallman who maintains a list of reasons not to use Microsoft on his personal websites couldn't muster any reason not to speak there. I have no words. I did notice the Creative Commons thing on the slide as well, by the way. I was like, Stallman's using Creative Commons now? That's even more. That's almost more of a surprise than him talking at Microsoft. Anyway, I don't understand the world anymore with this. I don't know. I'm getting too old for this shit. Um, Google has open sourced a library for differential privacy. This is something that Apple has been using as well, and I find really interesting. So this Google has open sourced the thing they're using themselves. So differential privacy, as far as I understand it, and I could be entirely wrong about this, is so you have some data um, where you kind of want to, you know, respect the privacy of the people whose data it is, and you want to do analysis on the data, and this is a way to have that data, do analysis on it, but respect everybody's privacy. Tommy Bowman says in response to Stallman at Microsoft, wonder if he ate his toenails again. No, no need to bring up personal stuff here. Stop trolling. Yeah, so it's kind of a way to do a statistical and to kind of divorce the statistical significance of the data from the actual data. So basically giving people or the software the ability to do statistical analysis. Like, I don't know, let's say I'm Google and I have Android user data, right? I have location data from people because they use Google Maps. So I want to give my software or my engineers or another company's engineers the ability to figure out certain things, like how long is a normal a normal person's way to work, like in Germany, how long, or let's say in Hamburg, how long is the typical way to work of somebody, the typical commute of somebody who lives in Hamburg. And I want to give them the ability to extract that from the data without extracting where does Fab live and work, right? Or where does this any person I want to figure out where do they live and work. And this sounds like a very interesting system, like a very interesting thing, a very important thing for technology in the future. But it's also supremely complicated. And I have read into this and I really don't understand how it works. So I'll be very interested to see what comes out of this. I'd be very interested to see if people or companies actually use this library. And if it actually works. So this is was announced on the Google developers blog, enabling developers and organizations to use differential privacy. And they say stuff about this. This has like built-in statistical functions and also testing to make sure you're not misusing the library, because that is the biggest danger with this. That if you've done any research into privacy, like in the real world, it is very often the case. It's like IT security in general. It's very often the case that people have the right intentions, and they, let's say they want to respect their users' privacy, but then there's like a implementation problem or some bug, and it just spills data anyway, right? And that would be the big danger with a library like this. That so once, if you feed it data and if it breaks and spills out private information of people, it's too late at that point, right? So you need to make really sure that doesn't happen. And I'd be really interested in how well this works, and also how useful the data is that you get out of that, because that will be the biggest factor of adoption, right? If using this and respecting people's privacy gives you a lot less useful information, and I guess companies won't do it. So just very interesting technology, something really important for the I nearly said Zukunft. For the Zukunft, for the future. So let's keep an eye on that, shall we? I have before I leave for the weekend. Something for the weekend, sir. I have one last story because everybody loves Time AI. Apparently, everybody who's watching and listening to this has lots of people have told me they found the Time AI stuff really funny. So you might be interested to read Bruce Schneier's blog. Obviously, Bruce Schneier, a massively respected alumni in the world of information security, runs a very nice blog if you're interested in privacy, IT security, or just squids. And I think these days he is says he's lecturer at Harvard's Kennedy School and also a board member of the EFF, and generally travels the world, and also often talks about, or in the past used to talk a lot about, he used to have a column called The Doghouse, where he would write about snake oil security companies and concepts and people inventing their own cryptology and obviously fucking that up because that's how it goes. And he is reviving this column for especially for Time AI, because he said he stopped doing this because it stopped being fun, and it's always basically because it's always the same pattern. These people who invent this shit or invent stuff, and then we've invented new cryptology and stuff. And but he said sometimes it's important to call people out, and he does this with Cron Sterling and Time AI, and has a very long post, well, very long for his standards, where he basically explains why the Time AI thing rings all warning bells, or should ring all warning bells. He links people who examined their claims. He just debunks stuff. For example, they have lots of Trumpist bullshit where they basically say something that, I read up from their website, right, and told you, look, just watch the trailer, and you will see it's like this Boris Johnson Trump way of doing things, where they kind of say things that kind of sound scientific and sound important, but once you think about them deeper and you dig into them, you'll figure out that it's all bullshit. But they're just trying to, in Germany we call this blender, they're trying to just distract you, basically blind you, and just lull you in. So one thing I found very interesting is, I hadn't even picked that up, but on their website they say, in March of 2019, Grant identified the first infinite prime number prediction pattern, where the discovery was published on Cornell University's arXiv.org, titled blah blah blah. So basically, as Schneier points out, what they're doing here is they're trying to use the Cornell name to give their stuff credibility, even though anybody who knows anything about scientific publishing knows that arXiv is a preprint server. So basically, you pre-publish research there that hasn't been peer-reviewed. The whole idea of a preprint server is to publish something that hasn't been peer-reviewed, which can have value. This is an important thing to do in science, but basically they're trying to claim Cornell has vetted this in some way, when in reality anybody can upload anything to arXiv. I could write a paper on some cryptography I'm invented, and anybody who knows me knows that my grasp of mathematics is rudimentary at best. I've never made any claims to the contrary. I can't even do calculations in my head. But I could publish a paper there. Anyway, just cool. I thought it was cool that Schneier took time out of his obviously busy day to write that up. Some really good stuff in there, some really good links. So it's well worth reading, and this should put it to rest. So if you ever get into a discussion with anybody about this shit, just bookmark that Schneier piece, and you can just link them to that, and it should explain everything, which is great. Which often doesn't really happen often anymore on the internet. So that's it for me. Had a bit of a to recap. Had a bit of a blues last few days. Getting old. Realizing we're all rapidly marching towards death. And yeah, there's nothing for it. You can just, as we say where I'm from, Arschbacken zusammenkneifen und weitermachen. Clench your ass, your butt cheeks, and just keep going, which is what I'm doing. So I'll be back on Monday, back on a regular schedule at 10 a.m. in the morning, European time, Central European summertime to be correct, even though it is not really summer anymore. But yeah, that's how it works. Anyway, yeah, I hope you have a good day, good rest of the day, Friday, and then have a lovely weekend, and just go out there and enjoy life a bit. Mike says stay strong, always, always. I don't have these. I'm really not somebody to get depression or something like this. I usually don't have these moods, so I just needed to work myself through a bit of stuff. I think everybody goes through stuff like that, but I'm good. I'm not the one who is really suffering. So have a nice day. Enjoy your Friday. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you on Monday for more tech news. Until then, goodbye.